What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Let's Excel Together. Today we're going to be talking about case statements. Case statements are extremely powerful in the world of VBA. What case statements allow you to do is take a set of conditions and evaluate another value based on those set of conditions. So if you haven't heard of case statements today, stick around because it's going to be an excellent tutorial on learning how to set up those case statements and how powerful they really can be. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. So I set up a little scenario here. Let's say we have a product category and it's simply just the number we have 1 through 4 here, and then the product description is blank. So let's say, for example, we need to fill in this product description based on this key. Okay, so what we could do, the long and non-efficient way would be, okay, well, we have product category of 2, which equals mouse. So we could come in here and say mouse, this is another mouse, and then we have a computer, and so on and so forth. And we could do this for all these. Now there's only 32 rows in this example, but imagine there were 500. Okay, so that would take quite some time to be able to get all that done. So what we're able to do is set up a case statement in VBA to accomplish this in a blink of an eye. So we're going to do two things, actually. If you missed last week's video, we talked about for loops. And for loops allow you to iterate through a range of cells. So in here, we're going to be iterating through each of these. So if you didn't see last week's video, I would highly recommend going back and watching that before you come and watch this one, because we're going to do a for loop and a case statement in this situation. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up our module here. We're going to just say sub practice case. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is set up our for loop. So we need to determine how many times do we need to execute our case statement. So in this case, there's 32 rows, so we're going to set it up for a 32, an interval of 32 for the for loop. Okay, so we're going to say for x equals 2, which is our starting row, row 2, to 32, and then we're just going to close it with next x. Great. Okay, so now this is where we're going to set up our case statement. So essentially what we need to do is create if you're familiar with the if statement in Excel, we're going to do something similar. We're going to say if this value is 2, or sorry, if this value is 1, 2, 3, or 4, then write the appropriate word into this cell. Okay, so we're going to say, to start our case statement, we're going to say select case, and we're going to say the value that we want to determine, or the value we want to read. So it'll be range A and X, and X dot value. Okay, so this is saying column A, row X, which in our for loop is 2 for the first iteration. We want to evaluate that value. So then for their next step, we're going to say, okay, well, if the value is 1, we want to set the range of column B to keyboard. Perfect. So now it's going to say, okay, if this value is 1, set it to keyboard. If the value is 2, we want to set the value to be mouse. And then we're going to go on to 3. If it's 3, we're going to say set the value of column B to computer. And if it is, sorry, I wrote 2 here, this should be 3. If the value is 4, then we want to set the column B value to monitor. Awesome. And then the last part of a case statement is you want to say, well, if it's anything else, we still want to define it with something. So we're going to say case else. So if it's not 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're just going to set the column B value to, let's just say, unknown. Perfect. And then to end our case statement, we need to say end select. Perfect. So now we have a for loop, which is going to iterate through each one of these cells one by one and execute this case statement. So the case statement is going to look at the product category column, determine the value of it, and then match whichever value is here. So if it's a 2, it'll execute this line. If it's a 4, it'll execute this line. And if it's not 1, 2, 3, or 4, it's going to execute this line. Okay, so in my last video, I also mentioned stepping through your code. So what stepping through your code means is you can execute line by line by pressing F8 on your keyboard. So we're going to go ahead and do that just so you guys can see which lines are being executed and what's actually happening. Okay, so we're going to say F8, so we're in our for loop. Our first iteration is X. Great. So now we're getting into our case statement. Okay, so if you hover over this value, you see it says this select statement is evaluated to 2. So it's found this 2 value. Okay, so now it's going to go find which case statement equals 2. So it's going to look at the case 1, and it's not going to execute that one because 1 does not equal 2. It's going to go to the second one and say, oh, okay, we have a match. 2 equals 2. Okay, so I know I need to execute this line. So what it's going to do is it's going to say range B2. We're going to set the value to mouse, and bam. You'll see that it set the value to mouse, and then it ended our select. So now we're on our next iteration. The next value is a 2 again, so it'll evaluate to mouse. This next one, however, is a 3. So it's going to go to case 3, and it's going to set that value to computer. So that's all it is. It's very simple. It's a set of rules that you define, and we'll go ahead and execute the rest of this here. So we'll hit play, and bam, you'll see that it went through and evaluated all of these values. So if I come back in here and I say, and I change this value to 10, for example, and I execute this again, you'll see that it changed to unknown because we haven't defined what 10 means in our case statement here. So that's really it. We have a basic for loop, looping through the range, set up a basic case statement to evaluate these product categories and set the product description based on our case statement values. So that's it for case statement, you guys. See you next week.